Good morning. Welcome to Tenet's 2022 year-end earnings call. I'm Christina Boyd, Tenet's Director of Investor Relations. Today, we'll hear from Johnson Joseph, CEO of Tenet, and Jean Londerville, CFO. A Q&A will follow, led by Mark Schwallenberg of MZ Group. Some statements on this call may be forward-looking, which may include, but are not limited to, financial projections or other statements about the company's plans, objectives, expectations, or intentions. Everyone will be muted except for the presenters. Over to you, Johnson.
Thank you, Christina. Apologize here. I had a little bit of trouble taking control of the presentation. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Let's get right to it. If you've been a long-time investor of Tenet, you've heard me talk about the importance of data over the past couple of years now. By far, one of the most important things that happened in 2022 was the launch of the company's business hub in Canada. I believe that this will now show all of you what this company is really all about and why the data we've been capturing has so much value. Now, we'll talk more about the data in a minute, but just for now, let's focus a little bit on what happened in 2022. So, as I mentioned, we launched the Business Hub on November 30th, and before the platform was even launched, we had 5,000 pre-registered businesses now. We're currently in the process of onboarding those 5,000 businesses and gathering valuable information on each and every one of them. Now, we'll get into, once we get into the Outlook section, we're going to talk a little bit more about what we intend to do with the information that we're gathering. But for now, we're going to turn our attention to China because it's still our main area of operations. Now, we've been in China since, I'd say for the past 4 years now, we've been operating in China. And as you know, we've been generating revenue in China, charging a transaction fee for facilitating transactions between small and medium-sized businesses and financial institutions primarily. Now, while we have been doing that, you'll notice that we've also been focusing on specific industries, verticals. And one of the things that we continue to manage to accomplish in China is the diversification of the industries in which we operate. Again, you're going to see the link between that diversification and the importance, once again, of data. Now, specifically in 2022, we had certain things that we wanted to accomplish, but 2022 was a tough year in China, economically speaking, business-wise. Obviously, though, we know all about the situation with the lockdowns, COVID-19 lockdowns in China, and that had an impact on our revenue. Jean's going to talk about that a little bit more when we get into the specifics, the numbers for 2022. But aside from that, I have to say that personally, I'm still very satisfied with what we managed to accomplish in China. For instance, we started a very important pilot project where we are providing distribution solutions to small and medium-sized businesses that operate on JD platform, on JD.com. JD.com is one of China's leading e-commerce platforms. It's the equivalent of Amazon. It's, Amazon, I would say in the US here in North America, or in China, its main competitor is, I think people know Alibaba, but it's primarily Taobao, which sells to consumers. So JD.com is a very, very important player in the e-commerce space, and the work that we're doing with them, helping distribute products that are bought on the platform, is going to be absolutely huge for us. Now, one of the things that's not on this thing, on the slide deck right now, is our entry into the the more of the national distribution network in China with the transportation hub. So all of these things, while they are generating revenue for the company, I want you to start keeping in mind diversification, right? So we are now in supply chain financing, supply chain facilitation. So all the way up and down the supply chain, from raw material producers to factories to retailers, we're gathering information, we're facilitating transactions and gathering information on businesses operating in that sector. We are in the energy space. We are right now in clean tech. We facilitate transactions in the steel sector. So again, keep in mind diversification. The idea here is that we are gathering information and we're going to be able to get data on overall economic activity throughout China. And you're going to see a link here between what we're doing in Canada and what we're doing in China in a second. Now, let's switch to the outlook section. This is where things will start to get interesting. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, the most important thing, in my opinion, that happened in 2022 was the launch of the Business Hub platform in Canada. What does that mean for us? Again, it means you're going to start to get a picture now of why we believe data is so important and what we intend to do with that data. Just a little tidbit of information here before I continue on. So March 24th, that date may not mean much to some of you on this call right now, but March 24th was the date on which Statistics Canada released the retail sales numbers for the month of January in 2023. So think about this for a second. March 24th. So from January 31st to March 24th, we're looking at almost a 2-month period before Statistics Canada released sales data on the retail industry in the country. Now, imagine for a second. Now, by the way, this information, retail sales or construction, unemployment, these macroeconomic indicators are very important to the capital markets. Now, imagine for a second, if you are operating in that, if you're a capital markets person and you're able to get information on retail, manufacturing, construction, consulting, technology, whatever, not only are you able to get the information much quicker than anybody else is able to get that information, but you're able to get the information on a never before seen level. We're not talking about just sales information here. We're talking about sales, we're talking about inventory, we're talking about cash levels, we're talking about cost of goods sold, accounts payable, assets. I can go on and on. What we're doing with the Business Hub, by having access directly to data, directly, I should say, from the accounting software of the small and medium-sized businesses, we're going to have information and be able to monetize that information in ways I believe that are not available right now currently on the market. So in 2023, we're planning on launching our first two data-driven products. I say first two because there are a lot more. There's a lot more that we can do with the data. Now, we're currently in a capital raise period. So the company was limited in terms of the details that we could provide as far as what we expect the products to be, the addressable market, and so on and so forth. But that doesn't prevent you as an investor from doing your own homework. So one thing we mentioned in the MD&A is the first product is more of call it a raw data based product. And the addressable market for that product, the target audience would be hedge fund managers, mutual fund managers, economists, banks, financial institutions, people, governments even. So people who would have a need for this type of information. Now, you can do your own homework and basically just look at the potential size of this market. You would get a sense for how valuable data is right now to capital markets professionals, Wall Street, Bay Street, you name it. So this is the first product that we're looking to come up with. Again, we can't tell you right now about the size of the market, but that doesn't prevent you from doing your own homework. And if you're a serious investor about Tenet, you're a serious investor in Tenet, and you want to know what the company's all about, what the potential behind the company is, I would encourage you to do that research for yourself even before we're able to communicate more information about that. The second product uh, that we're planning to come out with in 2023 is a product, and I'm going to read verbatim here in the MD&A just to make sure I stay within the boundaries. So in the MD&A, we state that the company is also in the early stages of developing a data-driven product which would use proprietary algorithms and AI to analyze and look for correlations between public company data and SME data collected by the company. Now, this particular product, what we're looking to do with this particular product is we're looking to give insights to individuals who buy and sell their own stock. Again, we can't get into all of the details, but I would encourage you, just in North America alone, I would encourage you to find out the potential size of the addressable market for such a product. And that will, again, give you a sense of where this company is headed and what we're all about, why we have put so much focus on data, data, data. Now, again, keep in mind the Business Hub, the general idea behind the Business Hub is we're offering valuable products and services to SMEs in exchange for having data coming directly from their accounting software systems. Again, do your homework, look at the potential clients for the types of products that I just mentioned, and look at the potential addressable size of the market. And you will get a sense for why we are so excited about the future of this company. Now, that being said, now we currently operate in China. And as you know, we have tens of thousands of small and medium-sized businesses in a variety of industries on which we collect data. Our objectives in 2023 is not only to continue to grow in the Canadian market, but to make our entry with the Business Hub into the US market. We would also like in 2023 to have greater access to the capital markets because we're very ambitious at Tenet. We've already proven the concept in China that the Business Hub is attractive to small and medium-sized businesses. We're in the process of doing that in Canada, and we have every reason to believe that we're going to be successful in replicating the Business Hub in the US, eventually in Europe, and eventually in other parts of the world. So that takes capital. So one of the things that we want to do in 2023 is position ourselves to have greater access to the capital markets, both in Canada and in the US. We'll also be looking to establish strategic partnerships to accelerate the growth of the Business Hub, both in Canada and eventually in the US after we launch the platform there later on this year. So in terms of partnerships, what are we talking about? We're talking about working with small business associations, retail business associations, chambers of commerce. We're looking at working with potentially accounting software vendors, bookkeepers, and so on and so forth. So keep an eye out in 2023 for such announcements in terms of strategic partnerships. We'll also be looking to explore synergies between the Canadian and the Chinese Business Hub. So again, the business hubs are currently operating in China and in Canada independently of each other. One of the most important things that we want to accomplish in 2023 is to start linking those hubs. So we'll be working on a program where we're going to allow small businesses in Canada to have access to the Chinese market. Just take a minute and think about this. We've already started to identify certain Canadian products that we believe would be good sellers in China. So with our distribution partners and the relationships that we've established in China, we will be in a position to give, let's say, a small retailer in Toronto, all of a sudden, they will have an opportunity to sell some of their products in Beijing and Shanghai and cities across China, and vice versa. There are products as well that we believe are fairly unique that we've seen in China, and we would like to help bring some of these products here to North America. So the idea is to create a hub where small and medium-sized businesses can network, they can connect with each other, and partner up to have products sold all over the world. Last thing we're going to focus on in 2023 is the continued geographic and industrial vertical expansion in China. So as I mentioned before, there are certain industries that we're currently operating in China, but the idea is to continue to diversify. We want to be a kind of like the referral for predicting or getting a pulse on economic activity in China. Like I said, we already have tens of thousands of small businesses that we're gathering data on. The idea is to continue to do that, diversify, and be a referral, a reference essentially for economists, for analysts, for whoever, capital markets professionals, to get a sense of economic activity in China before anybody else has. So a lot of products are made in China, as I'm sure you know. So even large technology companies here in North America, they produce some of their products in China. So getting a sense of what's happening at a low level in China, economic level, is going to be a huge advantage for people who subscribe to our products, the products that we're planning on coming out with in 2023. Okay, one last word on capital market strategy before I turn it over to Jean, who's going to go into the details of the numbers for 2022. So capital markets, again, as I mentioned earlier, we are currently in the process of raising capital. So there's very little that I can actually say about what our capital market strategy is going to be in 2023. But we'll certainly be looking, like I said before, to do everything that we can to access the capital markets, particularly in the US, before the end of 2023. So thank you very much. I will be back with closing comments after Jean and the Q&A. So Jean, I'm going to turn it over to you now. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin, and welcome everybody. So Jean Andrevin, I'm the CFO of the company. I will make a quick overview of the financial results for 2022 versus compared to 2021. So revenue for the year 109,879 in 2022 compared to 103,633 last year, for a positive variation of 6,246,000. For the investor that is with us for a long time, been lower growth rate than we used to at Tenet. China was hit by the COVID lockdown heavily during 2022, but despite that, they were able to generate 6 million more in revenue. All the revenue again in 2022 is 100% from China. In a nutshell, so supply chain revenue represent 89 million of the 109, lifting $0.5 million in other type of revenue than supply chain. That's comparable to last year. Supply chain was $95.6 million. So a little bit less revenue on the supply chain side, and that it on the from the COVID affect the supply chain business more heavily. The good news is on the other revenue, we have new revenue from the insurance business, which was an acquisition of last year in end of the 2021 Q4. And also setup and integration revenue on the SaaS business for ASDS for $7 million at the end of 2022, which is bringing a new stream of revenue with higher margin than supply chain, which is good news. So this is the summary on the revenue side for 2022. Cost of service, with the reduction of the supply chain revenue, the cost of service related to this supply chain reduced also in proportion. And the margin on these cost of service from the supply chain also increased by 1.3%. That means that we increased the margin on the supply chain in 2022, despite the lower revenue. So 82.7 million in cost of service in 2022 versus 89.7 last year, with negative variance of $7 million. Software delivery service, $3.3 million in 2022. There was this type of expense in 2021. This is related to the Arbit SaaS revenue. So these type of expense are resellable. So it's a part of the revenue from the Arbit business. So that's why we make a separate line. This is the type of software service that we're buying, but we're reselling to our customer. So salary fringe benefits increased by 7.5 million from 13.2 million to 5.7 million. So twofold there. The first one is from China with 40 employee more year over year at the end of the year. Mainly in the last quarter of the year with the acquisition of ESTH in the transportation service supply chain. That's bring 20 plus employees. So this is where we're gonna make an analysis. We're actually making an analysis on these number of employees for 2023 right now, but this is have an impact on the number of employees at the end of 2022. And in Canada, we have 47 more employee between Cubular and Tenoris. So we're at 68 employees at the end of the year in Canada compared to 21. So this is the effect of the delivery of our business plan, that we need employees in Canada to deliver our business plan for Cubular and Tenoris. That was for the employee. Service fee. So this is the non-sellable cost for the SaaS business. Also in China, 2.4 million. So this is directly attributable to the SaaS business in China that is we're not selling. So it's a cost of service. Outside service, this is directly the service that we buy in China and Canada for the support on the software, different platform that we have. So there was no cost like this in last year. Mainly it's Arbit again, and the new Califang sub business in the energy sector in China and Cubular in Canada. Professional fee, mainly legal expense that we have in North America and China, mainly in Canada and the US for the governance. Legal fees that we have. Also, we start the implementation of SOX control in China and Canada also. So there's a professional fee attached to it. So this is for the increase in our management on the internal control. So we have some consultant helping us delivering these enhanced control. Insurance, 1 million more. This is directly attributable to the director and officer insurance costs that start at the end of 2021. Mainly the insurance service industry, especially in the D&O, increased a lot last year. It stabilized in 2022, but still at higher cost on the insurance side for the D&O business in 2022. Expected credit loss plus 2.2 million, mainly in China. It's all in China. First, on the ASFC service level in the car loans business in China, with the effect of the COVID and the industry and the economy in China, the paying delay was higher, so we have to be prudent on the expected credit loss for 2022, so that increased the expense of the provision of expected credit loss. We're lower also the amount in the accounts receivable side regarding these loans, and we have two specific provision that we take also in China. We have some information that two specific business partner can have some difficulty to pay back the loan, so we take that provision on the very conservative side, I will say. But regarding the economy in China, I think it was the prudent way to approach this. Amortization of intangible assets. So all the platform were taking amortization. So we have some Cubular platform was acquired last year in 2021. So that's bring almost 2 million increase in the amortization of intangible asset, and other platform in China like Heartbeat and Gold River. So that explained the increase by 4.5 million. Impairment of goodwill and impairment of intangible assets. So like we explained in the MD&A, there was another switch of postpone of almost a year in the revenue that we expect from the Cubular platform that have an impact on the impairment calculation. So we have 35.6 million impairment of goodwill regarding to the projected Cubular software acquisition that was made in 2021, and almost $7 million on the intangible asset. So on the acquisition, we have two parts, the goodwill and the intangible asset. We make an impairment test, made the calculation, and we came out with these impairment for 2022. Last year was 41 million for Cubular and 12 million on the intangible asset, mostly from the Heartbeat platform in 2021. Change in fair value contingent. So this is the counterpart of the acquisition of Heartbeat in 2021. So we reduced the amount payable contingency for the future. So that's have a positive impact of 600,000 this year compared to 3.6 last year. For the rest, all others, 500,000 other expense. So total expense in 2022, 166,000 for a loss before income tax of 56 million. That's comparable to a loss before income tax of 50 million in 2021. For a net profit loss of 53 million in 2022 versus 48 million in 2021. Sorry, I have a little problem with my computer here. So So that's end up my presentation. I will transfer to Mark, who will go to the Q&A. Thank you.
Thanks, John. And yeah, we'll now take some questions for Johnson and G. Thanks for submitting them online and an email. First question, can you talk a little bit about just general activity level in the Canadian Business Hub, paint some color on this type of activity you're seeing, the member growth? I know we talked about having 5,000, by launch date in November, but any type of transactional data and how you think that will continue to grow throughout the year?
Yeah, sure. Again, as I mentioned earlier, Mark, it's a little bit tricky, right? Because we've been quiet for the past 5-6 months. So obviously, the Business Hub was launched back in November, so naturally things have been happening. But we've been quiet because of the prospectus review process and the capital that we're raising right now. So I have to be careful in terms of what I say here. So we can't get into the specifics in terms of number of registrants on the platform, but all I can say is that it's going well. We've obviously facilitated some credit transactions between our member financial institutions and the small and medium-sized businesses. We're seeing a very encouraging rate of adoption of the platform. We're also limited, obviously, in terms of what we wanted to do from a marketing standpoint to accelerate the process. It's one of the reasons why we want to get money into the company as quickly as possible so that we can continue with the momentum that we have right now. So without getting into the specifics, the Business Hub is doing well in Canada. We're very happy with what we're seeing, and hopefully we can get the capital raise and the prospectus stuff behind us so that we can let the investors know more in terms of what's happening here in Canada and eventually in the US as well.
Okay, thanks. And just kind of building on that, I know we talked about possible expansion to the US in 2023, but is there any way we can pinpoint more when that launch might happen?
Unfortunately, again, it's one of the things that we can't really discuss into too much detail. What's going to be very important for this company, Mark, and for all of the investors here is for us to get the funding, get the financing closed as quickly as possible, because everything that we're talking about here, the execution of our business plan, like I mentioned earlier, it takes capital, right? So how quickly we're able to close the financing, that's going to impact how quickly we're able to enter the US market. But for now, I cannot give a date. But our estimation is that certainly it will happen before the end of this year.
No, that makes sense. That sounds good. Couple questions on expenses and headcount, just general trends for moving forward this year. We've seen increases in China and Canada, as John just mentioned. So can you talk about just what you might anticipate for that?
Yes. Listen, I would expect, or based on the forecasted numbers that we have internally, I would expect the company to be here in Canada. I would expect us to be anywhere between 110, 100, and possibly 150 people before the end of this year. I'm talking North America, right? So I'm talking between Canadian operations and US operations as well. So, but again, it really all goes back to our ability to raise capital. We'll see how it goes this year. But if I had it my way, Mark, we would be 200-300 people before the end of this year, and we'd have like $100 million in our bank account, right? But that would allow us basically to really show people what we can do. But we have to be realistic, and just execute as we're able to access the capital markets.
Okay, sounds good. little bit on the China front. Got some questions about the clean energy project. Where that is. Like there was a pilot we announced. Maybe it was impacted by some of the shutdowns, but can you talk about that business at all, or what we see moving forward in that?
Oh, yes, absolutely. As I mentioned earlier, the most important thing for us right now in China is diversification, right? So I understand investors are, investors understand that the way we generate money right now, the way we generate revenue is by, is on a transactional fee basis, right? But yes, we're going to continue to do that in China, and we're expecting to continue to grow the business in China for the revenues to to scale up. But our focus is really on data diversification. Okay, so the project that we worked on through the clients of JD.com is it allows us basically to kind of like not necessarily enter a new space, but we have a level of detail that we didn't have before. We were gathering information on actual products that are being sold, products that are in demand. It brings a new dimension to our data set, and that's what the focus is on when it comes to that project.
Got it. Okay. No, that makes a lot of sense. Question for Jean. Could you go over the insurance revenue segment again for 2022? I think you mentioned it, but I'm not sure if I heard it correctly.
Yeah. So the segment, insurance segment, generate 7.2 to be precise. Yeah, 7.2 million of revenue in 2022.
Okay. Thank you. Johnson, on the last earnings call, we talked about a potential large lender coming in and partnering up with Tenet. I don't think we've seen a lot since then, but is there any incremental update you can provide on that front?
Again, quiet period and everything else, but you're right. We did mention that on the last earnings call, and that's in the works right now. So the relationship has been established with that lender. The impact of that probably won't be seen in Q1, but things are on the right track, let's just say.
Okay. Sounds good. And we got to ask on. I know you probably can't say too much, but regarding NASDAQ and the SEC review, if you can provide any insight on that front.
Yeah, that's actually one of the things that I cannot talk about.
Yeah.
But again, the plan is to access the capital markets in the US, right? So that's all I can say about that. So we're going to continue basically to once we have updated information, we will provide it. But for now, like the focus is on closing the financing and getting through the prospectus review, right? So we have to leave it at that, unfortunately, for now.
Okay. Very good. I've basically wrapped up about most of the questions we got in that we can at least talk about. So I will turn it back to you, Johnson, for some closing remarks.
Okay. Thanks. Thank you so much, Mark. So before I let everybody go, I again want to stress the importance of the launch of the Business Hub. I know that most of you that have invested in this company invested based on the model that we presented 3 years, maybe 4 years ago in China when we first launched the Business Hub, and we're charging a fee. And that's how the revenues were being generated. So naturally, people were asking questions about margins, supply chain verticals, and so on and so forth. I understand all of that, but I've been telling people that China was a proof of concept. I've been saying that for the last couple of years and stressing the importance of data. What we have seen with the launch of the Business Hub in Canada at the end of November is the beginning of what I believe is the true face of Tenet. We are an analytics company, and there's going to be more and more talk at the company about data, analytics, and eventually artificial intelligence. That's what this company is all about. It's the future of the company. It's not just the future of Tenet. I believe analytics and AI is the future, period. So we are positioning this company right now to become one of the most important players globally when it comes to small and medium-sized business data and business intelligence in general. This is the company that you have invested in. And in 2023, what we hope to do is to show you the true face of Tenet, the Tenet Group, with our Kubler subsidiary here with the Business Hub in Canada and North America and the rest of the world, and eventually with our Tenoris 3 subsidiary, which is the data science subsidiary of the Tenet Group. So we're very, very excited about the future, very excited about 2023. This is where we're going to show you what Tenet is all about. So before you make a decision one way or another as to whether or not this company is on the right direction or you've invested in the right company, just give us a chance to show you what 2023 looks like, and you will realize what kind of company Tenet is. Now, that being said, I'm going to thank you for taking the time to attend our investor call here this morning. I know it's before market open, it's early, so we appreciate you making the effort to join us. Hopefully, we can continue to show you positive things going forward, and that you have made the right decision for investing in this company. So thank you very much, and I hope to see you again next quarter.